Thank you so much for joining us, Assembly Member.
Thank you so much for having me.
And of course, I know that the state budget has just recently been passed and lawmakers worked through the weekend to get it over the legislative finish line. So I wanted to get your perspective on the overall budget process this year, and how do you feel about the policy items that ultimately made it in the final enacted budget?
Obviously, I think, our leader, Carl Hasty, always does a good job at masterfully negotiating a very tough budget process, taking into account the regions of the state, taking it in regards to the priorities of the state, and also trying to compromise with the governor. I think, no state budget is perfect, but definitely a budget reflects the values of this legislative body and the governor. And I think we did a really good job. You think about some of the things there in the housing, again, not perfect, but we were able to do some really amazing things in this budget. And I think most importantly, we were able to save downstate, which is probably top of mind for me, and the most important thing that came out of the state budget turning back home.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned SUNY Downstate. You've been pretty vocal on your opposition of any plans to close down the hospital. It's no secret that SUNY Downstate has faced a lot of financial difficulties through the years, but luckily in the budget included capital funding for the hospital and funding to help with the overall operations of the hospital and to implement an advisory board. So I wanted to get your perspective on, what was included in the budget. Do you think it is enough?
Well, let me say this. One, I'm happy that my bill made it into the budget and that we're able to save downstate with, like you said, the makeup of a commission, a community advisory board, which is going to help shape the future of downstate. And obviously the funding, which was so critical because, in January, we were told that the hospital could close by July of this year. Obviously, an investment of $100 million in expense for this year and next year is, I think, critical to keeping the hospital services open. And obviously, $300 million you mentioned is the capital, but that's the floor, not the ceiling. I'm looking forward to the second half of this fight, which is twofold. One, working with our federal partners, and I've had a conversation with the congresswoman already in terms of finding federal funds as we look forward to the new year. And the second piece is really making sure that we come back to the table and figure out what the commission says the hospital needs. If it's a wing, it's a wing. If it's a brand new hospital, state of the art, that's what we get. But wanted to make sure there's a process in which the community could weigh in. Wanted to make sure there's a process in which we actually looked at the look back and made sure that we looked at how much years of investment we didn't have in the hospital and what do we need for the future of healthcare. The last piece that's really, really important is the federal reimbursement rates. And making sure we work with our federal partners to close that. For every procedure done on a Medicaid and Medicare patient at downstate, we only receive 30%. Or 30% less of those funds. We have to make sure we actually get all of that resource to make sure we can keep the hospital sustainable for the future.
And what were your conversations like with Assembly Speaker Carl Hasty and the executive chamber, as well as SUNY Chancellor John King, about saving the hospital this year?
Well, one, I did make a commitment both publicly and to the stakeholders that I would vote no on any budget that closed any services at downstate. And I think they heard that very loud and clear. The second piece is we have to invest in downstate. I think you covered it about a year ago. I brought Speaker Hasty to the district. We walk through Downstate Hospital, and there was a commitment then to make sure this is going to be a priority in this budget. So obviously we're shocked early this year when the announcement came out that there was a plan that did not include community voices. I'm happy that the chancellor and I have had a good working relationship. The governor and I have had a phenomenal working relationship, and the speaker and I have a great partnership. And I think because of those things and because of communication and because of the needs and how important downstate is, not only to central Brooklyn, but to the medical field in general. You think about it, downstate graduates 1/3 doctors of color, not only in the city or the state, but in the country. So this is a critical hospital. It's a teaching hospital, and it's also a research center where the MRI was created. I can't imagine any conversation where downstate will be closing. So we're just happy that we're back on the right track and trying to get it to a place where it's going to be sustainable for the next 50 years to 100 years.
And another legislative priority that you've had has been focusing on cracking down on EBT theft. So can you tell us, why this has been important to you and what you've been hearing from your constituents about how EBT theft has impacted not only their lives, but also their pockets?
Yeah, one of the big things that we hear at our constituent service team is that housing is obviously the number one issue we face, but the second one was food insecurity, and the third one was EBT theft, which was surprising to me when I started looking at some of our data. EBT theft is becoming a rapid crime where, because a lot of these EBT cards don't have chip technology and because there's no notification when someone's EBT card is compromised, you have people who literally are trying to feed their families who are on the register line at the grocery store, swiping their cards, only to discover at that moment that their funding has been stolen. Myself and Assemblymember Sam Berger from Queens have teamed up with a package of legislation really focused on cracking down on EBT theft. One of those bills have passed already, which is making sure that people get notification. And the second piece is now really holding people accountable for their actions. Anyone who can steal food from a family is worthy of potentially facing a court and seeing a judge. So we're working on the second part of this legislation to make sure that no family in the state of New York goes hungry, particularly those who are being subsidized by the state and federal government with food support services.
And as you underscored, housing continues to be a very serious crisis, both in New York State and New York City. And it is certainly an issue that took up a lot of the oxygen when, I was speaking to leaders about the budget negotiations. So what is your perspective on the housing proposal that was included in the final enacted budget?
Again, I think no budget is perfect. And I think the interesting thing about this housing protection, this housing plan that we passed, it had 4 parts, right? It had some tenant protections, which again, we can never go too far in tenant protection. I think we obviously need to do more to protect tenants, particularly tenants who are paying their rents and are being sometimes abused by unscrupulous landlords. We did something for the development community in terms of making sure that there's incentives to develop with some tax abatements. We know that the cost of development is expensive, particularly in New York State and the city specifically. So we need to do something in the tax piece. And the last piece, we did something for labor. Really working towards wages that allow the people who build our communities to stay in our communities and have the kind of protection of the job where they won't be hurt. I think by doing some of those things, again, anytime you leave a negotiation table and nobody's completely happy, I think that means we had a really good negotiation because there were pieces that people had to give up at the table and pieces that got included. And I think that, again, this housing plan that the Speaker, the Governor, and the Leader of the Senate put together along with us is one that we can build on. Again, most of these things are first steps. They're not the final step. There's still a lot more work to do. Particularly in tenant protections, particularly on making sure that our MWBE communities are included and local developers are included. But I think this is the first step, and we have another 2 months to work on really thoughtful policy pieces that I think can enhance what we've done so far.
And as we head into the last 2 months of the legislative session, what is your mindset to ensure that it is the most successful? And also, what is your mindset as you gear up for re-election this year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you talk about the success of this session, the first half of the year is obviously making sure we have a budget that's a working document of our values, our collective values. And now we work on the policy piece. So the second half is really just zoned in on policy. For my team and I, we already have met twice this week already to think about the piece of legislation that we want to prioritize towards the end of this session. And for me and my staff, what we do is we really look at our constituent service cases that come in, and we try to parallel or juxtapose that to some of the issues we're seeing and some of the bills we have, and really making sure we get those across the finish line. Always on that list is education, always on that list is housing, always on that list is access to food. And obviously, I think, the state has done a really good job of maternal health over the last couple of months as well, first in the nation to provide prenatal maternal health, and with so many of the states around the country stripping away women's health and autonomy. We want to make sure we continue to codify that here in the state of New York. So I think there's no shortage of things we can do over the next 2 months, and I'm excited about that and excited about being reelected and coming back for another 2 years to do some more work over the next few years.
Well, there's certainly a lot to look forward to, but unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us, Assembly Member.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. And we were speaking with Assembly Member Brian Cunningham.